Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome my listeners and viewers in the United States and all around the world. I am Vince Rocco, and it is Tuesday here in New York City, so let's go behind the headlines and get the real story. But first, this is Talking New York Real Estate, the state of our industry. And up front today, selling townhouses and buildings in New York City real estate is both exciting and challenging, given the city's dynamic market and high stakes. The process often involves catering to a discerning clientele, including international investors, wealthy families, and developers. Each property has unique characteristics, from historic brownstones in the West Village to sleek modern townhouses on the Upper East Side, making the ability to highlight a building's distinct charm crucial. The competition is fierce, with sellers needing to stay informed on market trends, neighborhood transformations, and potential zoning changes. The high prices and complex transactions require extensive negotiation skills and in-depth understanding of legal and financial intricacies, making expertise in these areas essential to succeed. Selling such properties offers big rewards, but the pressure to close deals and to navigate the city's ever-changing market landscape is equally immense. We will discuss, and we will have all that and so much more as Talking New York Real Estate gets underway on this very busy Tuesday morning. And in the news this morning, commercial and residential real estate in New York City has hit a crossroads, and some players are finding innovative ways to adapt while others are stuck in uncertainty. New York City's office market is in limbo, for example. Developers and banks are hoping for a brighter 2025 fueled by interest rate cuts, but some are bracing for a longer downturn. Developers are chomping at the bit to find new uses for those deteriorating office buildings, which could be the key to unlocking New York City's office to residential conversions. Meanwhile, the residential brokerage industry is under fire on multiple fronts. Brokerages are all fallen on hard times during the housing market downturn, with staff layoffs and continued low revenue and mounting losses, and in some cases, shaky share prices have made it difficult to recover. Uncertainty will likely be the norm for the industry for a while, but perhaps the upcoming interest rate cuts and the presidential election will provide some clarity. We can only hope. And meanwhile, StreetEasy is reporting this week the median asking price or asking rent in August rose just $20 from a year ago, as showing slowing demand and rising inventory cool competition among renters. Peak New York City rental season has moved up to April in recent years, as renters have begun their searches earlier to get a head start on the summer competition. While competition is cooling in much of the city, renter demand continues to outpace inventory in Queens, resulting in a 9% year-over-year increase in asking rents. Also, to afford a median-priced home in New York City, a buyer now must have an annual household income of at least $211,000, almost 3 times that of the national average. And in our ongoing series of street closures and the like, the city's Open Streets program will now allow schools to close 71 streets to traffic and open them to students to play without worrying about speeding cars. That's how to make an entire school full of children happy, but for stickball and double dutch, playing on the street has long been a rite of passage in New York City, but for the first time, the Department of Transportation's program has established a legal framework to close off streets for play and to support schools through the initiative, which became law in the spring. Figuring out how to strike a balance between the needs of children and people who want to park and drive on their block where they live is becoming tricky. And as I say all this time, this is one more absolutely ridiculous way to increase traffic and create havoc. Traffic is insane already. If ever we needed a change in City Hall, it is now. And finally, Clark Halstead created the Manhattan division of Sotheby's International Brokerage with Edward Lee Cave way back in 1976. He then co-founded Halstead Property in 1984 alongside Diane Ramirez, who served as president, CEO, and chairman of the firm. He shaped and modeled what we now understand residential real estate brokerage to be, said his nephew, Christopher Halstead, who was an executive director of sales with Brown Harris Stevens in Connecticut. That's part of his legacy. Roughly 20 years later, Halstead and Ramirez sold the brokerage to Terra Holdings, the parent company of BHS. He stayed on as chairman emeritus and served as a mentor and advisor. Ramirez remained at the firm, head of the firm, until it merged with Brown Harris in 2020. He was also a long-term member of and leader with the Real Estate Board of New York. Clark will always be remembered at this firm as a pioneer and true gentleman. May he rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. And with me at the table today from Brown Harris Stevens are Shagalov and Poulsen, Ante Jakic from Compass, and Jared Antin from Elegran Forbes Global Properties.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So we're going to talk today about townhouses. We're going to talk today about selling buildings. We're going to talk today about the higher end of our market here in New York City. Now, we all know that we've gone through a kind of slow period, but the higher end, I don't know, $5 million and up has been booming. All cash deals has been booming. Townhouses, we're going to talk about the evolution of townhouses. You know, in my 22 years in this business, they've been up, they've been down, they've been up after COVID, up again. So there's a lot to talk about and dissect when it comes to selling certain types of units or homes or apartments in New York City. So let's get at it. And I want to first start with Bo and Anna, because you recently put up a very expensive building at 105 Reed Street. It's, I guess, a building, not necessarily a townhouse, but it can be converted to multiple units as condos if you want to do that. It's asking $24,950,000. So bring your buyers. Bo, what is so special about this building?
Well, you know, it's funny you should ask that, because like one of the things that people ask me are like, who's going to buy something like that as a single family home? And I'm like, you go to Atlanta, you go to LA, you go to so many different places, and you see 30,000 square foot single family homes.
Right.
I mean, it's not unusual.
It's not unusual.
No. And so why
And that
not?
price point is not out of bounds either, by the way.
And so why not in New York? I mean,
Right.
if you want to, you know, make a statement in New York, having a 50-foot wide cast iron in Tribeca is, you know, that's making a statement.
Prime Tribeca, not like east of Broadway or like this is super prime block.
Well, I wanted to ask about that too, because it is in prime Tribeca and it is 50 feet wide.
Yep.
Okay, so it's a little unusual compared to the rest of the housing stock, but the cast iron buildings there are amazing.
They are. But one of the problems with a lot of those buildings in Tribeca is that they just, you know, you've got so much dark space in them. You know, the 20-footers, the 25-footers, there are these railroad apartments where a lot of the space is really dark. But when you have, you know, width, then you create these massive spaces that just get a lot of light, which is unusual.
Yeah,
Anna, what can be created in this house, in this building?
Oh God, I mean, the possibilities are endless. You can have a full home gym. You can have a pool. You can have
Bowling
alley,
archery range.
Yeah. I mean,
Is there parking
racing.
or capability to make underground parking?
I don't believe
there's
so.
not
no.
there's not a curb cut. But one of the things that I did when I first sold the building to the owner, he was a big Ducati fan, is that it still has the old sidewalk elevator, and you could turn that sidewalk elevator into a hoist. So you drive up and you put your Ducati right into it, and then it goes down into the basement.
But it has to be a Ducati.
It has to be, of course.
Well, the one thing
Why anything
I also
else?
want to just say about the light, I mean, all the buildings surrounding it are also 6-story cast iron buildings. So you do get a lot, and the street is pretty wide. So you do get a lot of light even on the lower floors.
The word that's coming to mind from hearing this is trophy, right? And if you
Yes.
look at what's selling
Correct.
today and what the luxury buyers want, they want trophy properties. It's so rare to have something that's 50 feet wide. It's rare to have something that's 30 feet wide or larger. So, you know, if buyers want to be able to preserve value, it's finding something that you can't find elsewhere. It's interesting. I have in Mill Basin down in deep Brooklyn, I have what I'm affectionately calling Miami in New York. We have a 9,000 square foot
Yes, you
Italian
do.
style.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful home that's right on the water. So you can take your boat right to Midtown Manhattan. If Vince wants to beat the traffic, I got the perfect solution.
But every time you post that, I think I am in Miami because it
it
looks
is.
like South Florida.
Yeah.
It really does.
But you want to talk about all the differences, needing to get an engineer to test the pylons and all this other stuff. So you have a whole different world when it comes to selling buildings as opposed to selling insular, you know, condos or co-ops, which you need a totally different type of agent, a totally different skill set, and many times to be able to properly represent a buyer and or a seller.
Jared, so, you know, why is the trophy aspect of buying something like that important to people? Who are the people who are buying trophies?
So scarce, and the whole concept of scarcity is what value is all about and how you preserve value. Part of the issue with what we call the cookie cutter apartments is they're a dime a dozen, and there's no scarce ability there. So the reason why you want to buy something that's trophy is it can't be replicated, and that's where the value comes in. So you're either buying something that's incredibly high, up that you have views that are protected, or you're buying something in a grade A location, or you're buying something with a scale that can't be recreated, whether that's a building width or contiguous square footage within a condo or a co-op. And the people that are buying are the ones that are looking to both get some use out of it, make a statement for sure, and also be able to ensure that their investment is protected. And for many of those times, you're looking at New York City real estate as a Swiss bank account, so to speak. We're able to put $1 in and know that that dollar is going to be safe and protected, as the market goes up and down.
I think buyers are really screaming for quality these days, and they really want it, and especially on the high end. And I think a lot of developers are scared of going in, and sort of this old school mentality where they're like, oh, people come in and rip everything out anyways. But I don't think that's necessarily true. If you really have a great designer and if you have quality that goes into these buildings, these apartments, instead of using, your traditional 6 or 8 inch white oak floors, go in there, use some 16-inch Denison, use something special, use hard oak, and that's where you really create a quality that can sell at a much higher
when you
price per square foot.
have a shell such as 105 Reed, that's where the quality really kind of shines. If you have just a standard, like office building that would be converted, like I know we're going to talk about later, there's you still can go quality, but like when you have something that's 50 foot wide and cast iron and all of those original details, it really, really shines there.
What's driving the need today for the quality, Bo, that you just referenced? I mean, I would think that because of the price points that people have to spend in this town based on, compared to anywhere else, that we would want a little more for our money or a little better for our money. Is that what's driving the need for quality? Or is it just people, don't want to have to fix too many things when they buy a home or a building or a townhouse? I mean, what's the drive to quality right now? I think we always had it, but
yeah, no.
maybe more
I was going to
so
say
than
we've always had it, but it went away for a little while. That was sort of the crazy thing that it. Back in I think the 60s and 70s and in between, there was these eras where it kind of went away. But if you look at the old buildings in New York, look at the quality that was put into these cast iron buildings and the detail and the design. You can't pay for
and
that
all the
anymore.
pre-wars.
And that's what's selling. And that because it was beautiful and people put work into it. They put handcraft into it, and that's I think people are going back to that. They
handcraft. I love that word, handcraft. Interesting.
Yeah. And I think there is definitely a movement towards that. If you look at, we just toured 217 West 57th. Like the quality is it's beautiful. It's beautifully done. The finishes are neutral but have style to them.
They have to be neutral.
There's a lot of that kind of coming back in.
Yeah.
It also depends on whom the target buyer is, right? You look at the different segments of the building. You have your affordable luxury, and your super luxury. So right now, just based upon the economics, there's no money to be made, generally speaking, for a developer to build a quote-unquote affordable luxury. And that's where you see a bit more of that cookie cutter, smaller units. And it's the high-end consumers that are driving discretionary purchases. To be clear, they don't need anything. They want it. They desperately want it. And they have the discretionary funds to pay top dollar for something that has an interesting story behind it that's, sustainably sourced and refurbished. So there's that, and the developers are responding to needs. And for those that are buying something in need of work, they're putting in care to create that story. Because when you go to sell it, well, first of all, they're not really worried about when you resell it, but the developers know that that's where the market is, and there's a story to be told. And at the end of the day, when you're selling real estate, you're selling the story and the dream as much as anything else.
Ante Jakic, so let's talk a little bit about the process of selling a townhouse. You've had your share of many townhouse sales. How does it differ from, selling regular apartments or, whether they're luxury or not? What is driving people to want to buy a townhome or live in a townhouse versus, after COVID, the thing was I need outdoor space, I need rooftop, God forbid we had another pandemic. I want to be in my own home where I can do my own thing. Is that still the driving force or is it something else?
I think so. If you look at the townhouse market, every week there's more than 5 townhouses over 5 million getting signed in Manhattan, and in Brooklyn there's a ton being signed every week. I'm actually listing a townhouse in Brooklyn today. It has a beautiful garden with a lot of sun, a tree. There's a rooftop. There's also an investment unit or a mother-in-law suite, so somebody could rent it out or pay for their taxes. The taxes are usually less than a townhouse. There's no HOA fees. So with higher interest rates, buyers actually could spend more buying a townhouse because they're not spending on HOA condo fees every month.
And it's private living. It's like living in your own home in the suburbs, right? So why is Brooklyn, I've noticed, looking at the marketplace, that Brooklyn is listing a lot more townhouses than Manhattan proper these days, or even Queens or any of the other boroughs. Why in Brooklyn are so many houses coming on market? Is it because the prices have escalated to a point where they now make sense to sell? Or is it another reason? I mean, there are so many more in Brooklyn.
If you look at how Brooklyn's been developed, first of all, Brooklyn is way larger than Manhattan, but it's also less dense. So there's naturally more 2 and 3 families in Brooklyn. And you're seeing continued gentrification and continued push of development further and further. So you have many of these people that have owned these buildings for generations or, 10, 20, 30, 40 years that are looking now to capitalize on the value of them. And you're seeing them all, get rehab. Some are converted to single family. Others, depending on the air rights, are getting, bought up and, made into boutique condos. But just naturally, there's more of them to go around, and they're at a more affordable price point or entry point than in Manhattan.
And some people actually are going back to apartment living from townhouse living. So we're seeing that sometimes that people sort of overestimate or underestimate the work that goes into owning a home versus having a doorman and having an apartment in a condo where you don't have to fix the roof. You don't have a $200,000 roof leak that you have to take care of. So those things are things that surprise people who have bought townhomes.
And well, isn't that a trend that goes way back to the 20s and 30s when the pre-war buildings began, right? When the pre-war buildings were developed, because people wanted or were tired, as you just indicated, of living in a house and having to worry about the roof and the boiler and the sidewalk and the trash, whatever. Yeah. I want to live in luxury, so I'm going to go live in a pre-war building, and I'm going to have a door staff, and I'm going to have everybody doing, for me, what I used to have to do in a townhouse. But again, as I said at the top of the show, the trend kind of goes back and forth with townhouses. Now it seems like people, maybe a little more, want to go back into that single family kind of living as if they were in the suburbs, but yet in the big old city.
That could also have something to do with post-COVID, I think. In Denmark, we have a term called hygge, and it's gone around.
Denmark.
And hygge is one of those things where you want coziness and you want comfort.
Correct.
And I feel like a lot of people have sort of trended back towards that. And that's what you get from townhouses.
Especially if you have a family, right?
Yeah,
everybody's
100%.
contained in one space.
But also a lot
floors.
of people are traveling more than ever before, especially after COVID. So being in a townhouse, I mean, there's a lot of maintenance when you're not around that you have to hire somebody to upkeep your home. So when you're back, going back into doorman buildings, you really don't have to worry about any of that. And, I think it just kind of speaks to like the next stage of, how people are living. And I think travel is through the roof right now.
It absolutely is. All right, we have to take a quick break. No one's going anywhere. We will be right back after these messages. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. Don't go away.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Okay, everybody, we are back. I wanted to touch on, the challenges that we face selling townhouses or buildings compared to the run-of-the-mill apartments that, there are thousands and thousands of on the market, in New York City at any point in time. There are challenges to selling townhouses. A lot of it is the price point. A lot of it is, how people choose to live, as you all indicated before. But what are some of the challenges you face? You guys selling, this big building that has tons of potential to either convert to condominium use or, maybe storefront and then condo, whatever, multiple different options. But what are the challenges that people face when they come to these buildings? Do I really want to live like this? Do I really want to live alone? Or do I want to buy a big building and convert it and make millions more in selling each of the condo? What challenges do people are currently listing? What is the list price of your upcoming
It's
townhouse?
it's a really good price because the seller listens, so it's going to be 3,395. It's
Fantastic.
4 levels. It's in Williamsburg, so I think it's a really good price point for Williamsburg. It's like 5 bedrooms, but I think challenges for most townhouse buyers are number one, security. People with kids, people that travel a lot, they leave on the weekends, always ask about security. How am I going to keep this secure? Another thing is light, and another thing is views. If you're a buyer that's considering condos and townhouses, you're seeing maybe some of the best views that you could buy for a similar price point. So when you go to a townhouse, that garden or that rooftop needs to be so spectacular, or the moldings on the parlor floor, the fireplace needs to be so spectacular to give up that view that people look for in New York City.
And also the buildings surrounding that garden,
The block,
depending how tall they are.
right? Like a townhouse on a townhouse block in the middle of the block with trees and beautiful houses around. People, those sell right away. People want that. The one on a corner on a busy street isn't flying off the market so quickly.
Jared, talk a little bit about the house in, I call it the Miami, South Florida place in Mill Basin, because every time I see that post, as I indicated before, I just think, wow, wouldn't that be a fabulous place to live? What are the challenges in selling that type of place? I mean, that property looks enormous.
Yeah, it's 9,000 square feet. It's on a corner lot with, a beautiful pool, a hot tub, and right on the water. The challenge is it's finding the right buyer for it. It's very pretty, but a bit unique in terms of the style of it. But that area was first developed in the 1950s into the 60s. You had small homes that over the years have all been, torn down. This house was rebuilt in 2006. So you're having some very, very beautiful properties built over there. It's a little bit tough, to get to the city to commute during normal means, but that's why the water becomes a great way. And it also becomes an incredible way for an alternative to going to the Hamptons. It becomes a great summer retreat, somewhat great for Wall Street. But again, with houses, there's a lot of red tape in general. People don't understand any sort of open permits, things that you need to get closed with the Department of Buildings, hiring an expediter, and making sure that you're actually doing the full inspection, understanding the full condition of the roof, the foundation, anything in the basement, and truly understanding sort of the history of the building. If you go back to the townhouses, what was the legal status before? Were they legally converted to one family? Is there a difference between how New York City tax is classifying it versus the Department of Buildings? Was it ever an SRO? Have you got the certificate of non-harassment? So there's a whole slew of red tape that many sellers and buyers sort of underestimate with purchasing townhouses, which is why you need to be, I always like to work with our title company and run a preliminary title report before I ever take a townhouse, because I want to understand what skeletons are in the closet and give the seller enough time to go through the steps necessary to clean everything up before you get to due diligence.
You must listen to me in my classroom. That is so right on the money. I talk about that all the time. Bravo. All right, look.
Anna and I sell a lot of raw spaces, and those are, very difficult to sell a lot of times because people don't have the vision for it. And so what we'll do is create, for example, like vision boards for it and put them up in the spaces so people can actually see what the space could look like.
And it's so funny you say that, Bill, because 30 years ago when I first decided I wanted to live in New York City and I wanted to buy something, at the time in Tribeca and a few other areas, all you could really buy were raw spaces, okay? And I came this close to buying a beautiful, now will be worth $8 million, and I'm not even going to mention the building, okay? I'll tell you offline because it makes my stomach turn. Anyway, but I looked at that, as you just said, and said, oh, really? I mean, I can be creative, but what am I going to do with this space? What could I possibly do? And it was like, no money.
We have an off-market house in Brooklyn Heights, and it's a ground-up passive house, brand new construction, will be absolutely stunning. We have renderings, we have everything, and we've been quietly passing it around. And even with the renderings, people are like, "Well, but it's not there." I'm like, this is exactly what it's going to
Right.
look like. It's
Right.
going to be magical,
Right.
but it's not there.
Got to put the work into it. Let's talk about historical significance, landmark status on some houses. Does that make a difference when people are looking for a townhouse? I want it to be in a historic neighborhood. I want it to be landmarked. I want it to be, something that is so much different or better than the next. Because maybe when I go to sell that someday, it'll be worth even more. Is there any significance to that? Any importance to that for people? Historical or landmark?
I think it's huge. I mean, we had a $56 million sale last week for a pre-war townhouse on Fifth Avenue, right? You look at West 11th Street in the West Village, there's a number of houses that trade north of 20 or 25 million. They know that block. They want that block. People know that block from around the world. So that has value in itself.
It has value in itself because of the block, because of what has gone on there in the past. And value continues to increase, I would assume, over time because of that same thought, right? Let's talk about staff. I mean, people, when they move into a building, into a townhouse, you got to think about staff. Not your own in-house staff, but you need a part-time super. You need somebody to shovel the sidewalk and all that good stuff. When something breaks down, you got to call, to have the boiler fixed or the roof fixed. I know this is part of the equation that people put themselves through when they need to buy a place like that. Is it worth it for them?
It depends, right? I mean, it's a hyper-personal decision about the lifestyle that they want. Anytime I've worked with someone looking at townhouses and condos, 9.5 times out of 10, they end up with the condo and not the townhouse because people like the allure of a townhouse. But if they're also thinking about condo, they're most likely going to take the easier route than the harder route. It's a very particular type of buyer that wants a townhouse. They're either someone that wants extreme privacy, in which case they're going to fortify the townhouse and make it work. It's someone that likes the multi-living and needs more space because you're going to get a better, price per square foot value in a townhouse. Or they like the ability to have it be income producing where they can have, the owner's triplex or duplex and have some properties that they rented out and they basically are able to have their mortgage paid for. So there's a certain type of buyers or several types of buyers that townhouses are appropriate for. But generally, if someone wants a house, that's where the suburbs often then call. So it takes something specific for them to want the townhouse in the city.
One thing that we've done and told our buyers for townhouses over the years is set aside an account, put money into that account every month, call it $1,500 or $2,000, whatever it is, depending on the value of your home, but put that money aside because you will spend that. Because you do have an HOA fee or a common charge, right? Which is the maintenance of the home. So put that money aside, and that way it's there, and that way when you need to spend it, you don't feel like, oh my God, I just have this, $30,000 expenditure that I didn't think that was coming up, because it will come.
Ante, so international or global buyers, when they come to our town, regardless of the borough, are they looking at townhouses? And if so, why?
I think it depends. So you have a lot of nations that buy property for their use, whether it be a mission, a residence for a consulate. So those are some international buyers. I think international buyers that want a pied-à-terre, probably 50% out of the time would choose a condo. I think very wealthy families that come with, 20-person staff would buy a townhouse at a huge level for, privacy and just housing a lot of people.
Now, when we say international or global buyers at these price points, are they, important people, or are they just regular buyers? Are they, who are they? No names, but who are these people?
I think it's a mix. I mean, I sold a random family office, a townhouse last year, and it was for their 25-year-old daughter living in New York City.
Isn't that something?
Right, like $9 million. And they were like, oh, you're going to need to find someone to be a butler and a driver and a cook for our daughter. So I literally had to find someone and offer $150,000.
Are they looking to adopt somebody?
Did you apply?
Yeah. I didn't.
I was going to say, go ahead.
I think I would have done it for $1.5 million. Annually. Yeah, but
Correct.
100. Yeah, so we really had to find someone for $150,000 to be like security, driver, chef for this 25-year-old daughter who decided to live in New York City.
Yeah, I don't think anyone spending that kind of money for a 25-year-old is a regular person.
No.
You also see, a lot of demand right now for renting townhouses. So let's not forget
Yes,
about that
yes.
because you were able to get the benefits of a townhouse without the headache of the maintenance, and that's really a win-win. You see people, whether, again, any of the types of people we've been talking about, missions related to the government, movie stars, anyone that sort of wants that privacy. We've had athletes, and they're able to get the upside of the privacy. They're able to get a decent deal. They're spending a lot, but a decent deal for the square footage, renting a townhouse, and they can still call the guy, right, when they need something fixed.
Anytime I've sold townhouse, I think it's fun. It's very different. There's a lot of, things that you have to go through, inspections, whatever. But I think the people who look for them are specifically looking for the privacy or the anonymity of, living in a big city like New York, but not having to worry about, the neighbors and spying on them and whatever. Although I do wonder sometimes when celebrities move into townhouses because everybody finds out where people live. The paparazzi is a little more invasive in a townhouse than it is in a building because you're high up.
I was just going to say.
Sarah Jessica Parker.
When you have like a diehard,
100%.
Or Taylor Swift.
When you have a diehard New Yorker, someone that is home based in New York, it makes sense for them to have a townhouse. But if you have like a J-Lo, she's buying penthouses.
Right.
I know she was looking at townhouses recently.
Or a townhouse with a garage so they could drive right in.
Yeah, and she just sold her penthouse, I think. One of our agents, I think, sold
Richard
it.
Ornstein.
But
Richard,
it keeps a bit of distance, right? Because the penthouse, you can stand outside the building.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break here. We're getting the fire alarms going off, so we'll be right back right after these messages.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay, the fire alarm is over. It's just a test. So here we are again. Let's talk about. Oh, I can't even get it.
Wait, I have a good one to add.
Go ahead.
I think one other aspect for townhouse buyers that we didn't mention was there's no paperwork involved. You do not need to show a bank statement.
Right.
No one needs to know your address.
Anonymity.
No reference letters.
No financial colonoscopy.
You could be an alligator based in Australia buying a townhouse, and that certain type of buyer likes
Well, the
that.
same would also go for new development penthouses. I
Correct.
mean, your
Right.
townhouse buyer when they're also looking at condos, price point, they're looking at penthouses.
Yep.
So it's like a house in the sky or a house on the ground.
And that could in itself be a problem. I remember, as a quick story, way back when I first started in new development sales. So we're going back to 2007 maybe. And we had one of those buyers, all cash. At the time, the penthouse was only $2.5 million, okay, which was a lot in 2006.
Then, yeah.
All
Way
cash.
back then.
All cash. So, of course, contract gets signed. I called the co-broker, who was a named co-broker at the time, and I said, so we're going to be closing at the end of the week. Let's do a walkthrough, whatever. And she starts, and I'm like, what's wrong? She said, well, my buyer just called me this morning, and I was just about to call you. She said, he's still all cash.
Oh, boy.
However, he's going to show up at the closing table with $2.2 million in large bills in a suitcase at the closing table, and I just wanted to make sure that your developer is going to be okay with that. Well, she probably had to have the phone out to hear because what came out of my mouth was unbelievable. And then when I called the developer to tell him that, my phone was out to hear because he went and had the same reaction. Long story short, we didn't do the deal, okay? We gave him back his deposit money. Goodbye. Good luck. Who is this person?
An alligator in Florida.
Thank you. Okay. $2.5 million in the mattress at home. Okay.
Oh my
Works for
God.
somebody, not for me.
That is shady. That is shady.
True story. This one. True story. All right. Staffing. No, not staffing. Staging. So we all know how to stage apartments, but how do we stage townhouses? The last townhouse I had as a listing, we only staged like the first floor because to do a whole house is like lots and lots, tens of thousands of dollars. How do you do that effectively if it's empty? I mean, oftentimes they're not empty, so you have to deal with what you have to deal with.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's so important, especially with the 20-footers, because oftentimes those bedrooms are going to be spliced in half. and they're going to feel very, very small in the back.
Yeah.
So you need to stage because small always resonates. I mean, empty always resonates smaller, as everyone here knows. So you need to be able to show what you can fit. And also, a lot of these times, the living rooms are cut, or a fraction of them are cut for staircase and entry. So the living rooms tend to be on the smaller side. If you have a 20-footer, you've got maybe a 15-foot living room. That's not so big. I mean, when you think townhouse, you're thinking these, large living situations. That's really not usually the case.
Anna's correct. Before I was a real estate agent, I bought and sold a bunch of apartments. I think at one point, at the end of it, I owned 7. I didn't own at the same time, but buy and sell 7 different apartments. Okay. For me, and your point is well taken, where empty shows smaller. But when I was looking at apartments, even before I was an agent, and even now as an agent, I would much prefer to see an apartment empty versus other people's crap. And especially if the furniture isn't scaled properly, if it's overdone.
That's the importance of staging.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but the staging didn't really exist back, when I was buying apartments. But now staging makes a difference, right?
Bo can tell you about the narrowest house in New York that he sold before we were partnered. I mean, what was it, like 13 feet wide?
No, it was a little smaller.
Less?
Wow.
Yeah, 75 and a half Bedford. Yeah.
And what was the width?
Wow.
It was 9.5 feet wide, right?
Wow.
What? And he sold it.
Yeah, but for
Of course
example,
he did.
we have a townhouse in Gramercy that we rent out occasionally, and it's beautiful. And the couple who own it are designers, and they're incredible. And the way they have it staged for us it's their furniture every time we rent it out makes that 14-footer look like a 20-footer. I mean, it's incredible
There you go.
what you can
It's
do
all
with
about
the
scale.
right type of.
Yeah.
It's all about scale, right?
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Bo, let's talk about green technology as our resident at the table expert in green technology. So how does green technology help the sale of a building, or does it not help? And let's define it first for the listeners and viewers out there.
I mean, I think I think it's a very, very broad, sort of term.
Very.
And it can be anything from how you design the building to the type of product you put into the building to solar panels to how you heat your home, how you cool your home. So there's so much that goes into it, and there's not a turnkey one thing fits all. But I think one of the biggest things that is happening in the New York market, and the government's realizing this, and homeowners are realizing this, is that the movement of the passive house movement, which is really hyper-insulating homes and creating this comfortable space for people to live in, where you don't have cold spots, where you don't have drafts, where you don't have sort of heat blowing in your face when it's 20 below outside, where the temperature is always steady and you can sleep well in the home. Those are becoming more and more important, and I think people are realizing it. But
Especially after COVID.
Especially after COVID, yeah. But it's still a new thing, and I go to a lot of buildings where an apartment has been sitting around for like a month or 2 months, and you look at the amount of like soot that's accumulated on a windowsill or in curtains. We live in, a semi-dirty city. It's not the cleanest city in the world.
What city are you in?
That's being very polite. Okay, semi-dirty. I'm going to remember that one. Okay.
And so living in a home where you have where you have a ventilation system that's on filters and you get filtered air 24/7 throughout your home is incredible. It's great. And a lot of people just don't realize it, or they haven't experienced it. So that's one of the challenges, is people need to experience those homes before they actually see the value in them.
When the green technology does exist in a home, does it increase the value?
I think it does, yes. And I mean, it takes the right real estate agent to explain it to people.
Correct.
But I think it does, yeah.
I wouldn't be able to explain it, trust me, but he can. Jared, thoughts on green technology, and what are some of the more popular green, technologies that are being integrated in these homes, if any?
From my perspective, it's interesting. LEED certification in green had a big heyday, 2008 to 2010, 2011. It seems to lost some of its luster in the city, at least. Obviously, the city is doing a push to clean things up a bit, but it's hard to retrofit these old buildings to have that technology. It's easier to use it when you're building some, new things. We're seeing from more of the global outside New York City perspective, the high-end consumers and the ultra-high net worth individuals obviously want all the, passive energy, clean, all that stuff. But I don't see it as much in demand in New York City. I'm not experiencing buyers necessarily paying up for it, at least not yet. Part of it is they may not know the difference in the city. Part of it is they know that they're buying in the city for different reasons than a serene environment. So I'm not seeing it make a tremendous difference from a pricing perspective. It's from my experience a nice to have, not necessarily a must to have by most buyers.
You'll from my perspective, especially in Brooklyn, though, you'll see it in townhouses, like townhouses or homes in like Ditmas Park, things like that, where they have gone with passive house technology for designing the homes. I think they definitely command a premium. I think the lead, as you say, the lead buildings that were done in New York City, also because the program was it wasn't very well run. That's a little bit of a different story. But I think that there's definitely a premium for it, and I think the government is one that needs to push it at the end of the day, and that's what they're doing now.
Can you define passive house, please, for our audience?
Passive house? The short of it is there was a German scientist, mathematician, who came up with a formula in Darmstadt, Germany, to measure the air tightness of a home versus the solar gain through the home. And there's a formula that you can tap everything into by the size of the windows, by the air tightness of your house, and it gives you a certain measure of how energy efficient your home is.
Okay.
We consulted and represented a condo building in the East Village a couple of years ago that wanted to be passive, or at least have passive house technology. Because of the nature of a condo, you can't be certified passive. But there were a lot of elements put in to that effect. When Bo and I would bring people through, it's not something that people were necessarily looking for, but every single client was super impressed with all of the detail, the research, the quality of everything that was put into it, that it did have value to them in the end. But I mean, at that time, especially a couple of years ago, nobody was really even talking about it.
And I mean, to your point also, I mean, design and location win
And
every time.
yeah. And the design was stunning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Bo, are there tax incentives or financial benefits to townhouses that are green over townhouses that are not? Are there incentives or from
There's
tax perspective?
So there's a lot of incentives actually that people don't know about. One of them that recently was revamped was the green roofs. So you can actually get $15 per square foot in tax abatement if you do a green roof, and it doesn't matter if you do 50%, 20%, 10% of your roof. A lot of developers and architects don't know about it. And then, for example, for buildings, you can get up to 10% more FAR on your building if you go passive. So there are definitely a lot of incentives out there, and a lot that people don't know about. And I think the city needs to do a better job of educating and informing people. And that's one thing we talked about earlier. Is there's a lot of misinformation out there. For example, nobody's taking your gas stove.
Thank you. I was just going to add, well, I freaked out before the show when he was talking. I'm like, wait a minute. I live in a pre-war. I have a gas stove, and no one's going to knock on my door and say, you got to take your gas stove away, because I'm like, no, never happening.
Not happening.
Explain that, though.
No, so it's for new
Because it was a revelation for me.
Yes, so it's
and
for
you made me very happy today.
New buildings only.
Okay.
And the big thing that's happening is in 2026 is that new buildings 7 stories or under have to switch or cannot go with a fossil fuel burning furnace, et cetera. It has to be a heat pump, electric based, et cetera. So that's one of the big changes that's coming. But that's only for buildings 7 stories and under. You can still go out, replace your gas stove in the next few years with the new technology gas stoves, but they're still gas stoves, but they have a few new measures put into them to make them a little cleaner.
The bottom line is no one's taking my gas stove away, so I can continue to make my meatballs on Sunday on gas.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Doesn't work any other way, okay? Jared, give us, you write a brilliant report every week. I didn't get a chance to read it this morning. I apologize. It comes out just before the show, and I was running around doing crazy things. What's the current state of the market right now in New York City? Not townhouses, not buildings, not ultra high-end luxury, the normal market. Where are we?
So I'm going to separate Manhattan from Brooklyn. Manhattan continues to be counter-cyclical to the national trend. We had, just to quickly recap, we had a very, very robust start of the year. There was a lot of discretionary purchases. The luxury market was moving. We hit a little bit of a speed bump heading into March, April, May, some geopolitical things, some stock market things, and we had a quieter than normal spring. but it didn't fall off then into the summer. So the summer remained actually fairly active, all things considered. We have the Elgin Forbes Global Properties Consumer Sentiment Index, and we've been holding at or slightly above the pre-COVID benchmark. And we've seen actually a quite decent August and a really, really good start to September as buyers start really digesting the new inventory. Obviously, the interest rate drops have helped bring buyers off the sidelines. We're starting to see the early indications that first-time home buyers are getting pushed a little bit in the buy versus rent direction as, rents have stayed stubbornly high. So I'm cautiously optimistic about what's in store for the market. I'm desperately waiting to get into February of next year because I think we'll have a lot of the uncertainties behind us and a few rate drops. Brooklyn, though, is quite interesting because it's been bananas coming out of COVID, and it's been more closely tracking with the national market in terms of low supply, rising prices. But now we're seeing supply increase in Brooklyn. Manhattan still has year-over-year lower supply. Brooklyn's supply, though, for the first time in a long time, is rising. And although Brooklyn still remains incredibly competitive and well-priced homes move very, very quick with little discount, buyers are getting a little bit of more negotiability, and sellers need to be a little bit more aware of what's going on. So Brooklyn's tracking the national market a bit more, but all in all, the market in both boroughs remains fairly balanced, in equilibrium. Buyers nor sellers have major leverage, and it remains, as I like to say, a broker's market. You need the right agent who's going to find the right home and use some elbows in a nice way to make sure they protect their buyers and sellers.
Ante, in your opinion, was it a busy summer or not?
I think it was a healthy summer. Of course, depending on the market, I think sub 5 million is always pretty busy in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and they transact. I mean, typically those buyers above 5 million are not here in the summer. That being said, this summer it seems like they came back before Labor Day because the last 2 weeks of August had really high numbers of contracts over 4 million signed. So seems like it's a healthy market, and I think part of that is because prices in Manhattan have come down really low, almost to COVID levels in some cases.
Or have stayed down and not increased.
Correct.
However, with that said, Anna, recent announcements with interest rates coming down in September. I think today, September 17th, was the day of the first announced decrease. Up to 50 basis points potentially. I mean, that's pretty good for a first cut. How do you think that's going to affect the overall marketplace? And to Ante's point, pricing. Will we now start seeing sellers, as they always do, raise their prices?
Not quite yet. I think pricing still has to be very, very sensitive. I think buyers have been, really on the sidelines, as Jared said. It's time. Everyone is kind of antsy, and they want to spend money on themselves, and they want to invest in the market, and they want equity in the city. So I think people will start finally, having a bit more confidence in the market. I think pricing for the time being is going to have to stay pretty sensitive. At some point, when the switch flips in New York, the switch flips in New York.
Well, that's it. Yeah,
and that's yeah.
And
I think to your point that the new year is really going to be when it flips.
One thing we've seen is that we've shown our places more than ever before without people pulling the trigger. So
105 Reed, for example. I mean, we're showing it
3-4 times a day.
Like
we're
3-4 times
going to
a
get
day.
to that in a few minutes again because I'm really curious about that.
So people are out there.
But you're right. You know, the amount of showings has increased. But, and, you know, in the beginning, everybody's like, well, the market is hot. The market is hot. It's really people running around looking, but not necessarily pulling the trigger. But Jared's been saying for a long time now, you know, probably not till February or a little later next year that things are going to, you know, level off or start rocketing. I agree with that. The election will be over. The interest rates will have come down a couple of times then.
Yeah.
I mean, listen,
December could be the busiest month.
Yeah.
I think that could be very
one thing that we have to remember is that because buyers have been on the sidelines for so long at this point, they do have to re-educate themselves.
Yes, they do.
So coming in and being the lookers, that is just the process that people, you know, we're seeing it now because we've been so quiet before, but that was always there in play. It was just usually balanced out with people actually pulling the trigger. So, all these people that are re-educating themselves will be buyers.
But
at some
what's
point.
really
two Fed rate cuts as well. Then,
Exactly.
Well, or three. But I mean, it's interesting. The switch flips quickly, and as he said, really fast, and it's true. But when I think about how buyers need to re-educate themselves, that also happens quickly.
Yes.
Because I think they've been sitting back, not
because
twiddling
they'll
their
see
thumbs.
something they love, and
Right.
they
And they
figure it
know they
out.
want to,
Yeah.
they need to, they have to. Typical buy story in New York. I need to buy, want to buy, have to buy, whatever. Relocating.
We've been saying it show after show. It's a great time to buy.
Oh my
And
God!
there's
Yes.
no- inventory.
Right
Nobody.
now with the rate drop, there's inventory. Good inventory is very, very minor.
Nobody has
very
been building
minimal.
since 2018.
Well, that's what I
Right.
was going to ask you. The inventory problem has been really a problem, and no one's been building anything.
But there are great properties that are sitting on the market
Yes, there
because
are.
they priced incorrectly.
Yep.
And those are, I'll say it every single day if I need to all of my buyers. Those are the best properties to buy. Those are the ones that have been beaten down. They're ready to negotiate. If you want a deal, there are plenty of really great properties out there that are just sitting.
There are many great properties out there, and there are many opportunities to buy. It is a very defined buyer's market where you can get yourself some good deals, but you've got to be out there willing to do so.
I'll give you one small example. So 105 Retreat that we're selling and that we just talked about, I sold that in 2009, and it was right after the 2008 crash, and it was an amazing deal. And there have been, I think, about a dozen people that I've met over the years, just randomly, that had offers in on this building and didn't pull the trigger or wanted to wait because they were like, no, the prices are still going to come down. The market's still, softened.
Yep.
And they didn't do it, and they didn't take advantage, and they regret it to this day.
I've said for years on this show, after the 2008 financial crisis, two of my best years were 2009 and 2010 and into 11. I mean, booming.
Until
business.
11 is already like,
Yeah,
a whole
I
different
mean,
market.
it's-
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So I kind of feel that we're going to see that again.
Yeah.
Come the beginning of next year, and going through 2025 and forward. I really do feel that that's about to happen. It's almost like you can feel it, and everybody's just waiting and just sitting and holding off until whenever, and then bang, here we go.
Well,
They're all going to go as soon as that the next media article comes out saying,
Oh, of course.
everyone's out.
I
The
think
seller's market, here we go.
And the rental market is the perfect example. There's no rental inventory. If you're looking to rent
there isn't.
something, you can't find something.
No.
And what that means is there's demand for Manhattan, there's demand for New York City. And, during COVID, we didn't really have demand for New York City at this level. There was 1 million rentals. Rental prices were in some cases 70% lower than where they are today.
Crazy.
And that demand is going to resonate into the sales market. And I think when that turns, it's like 2014, 2015
Amazon
again.
just ended work from home. So, I've talked to the manager for Google here in the city. They're doing the same thing.
Same thing.
Everybody has
Yeah.
to be 4 days in
Yeah.
the office minimum.
And companies are doing this because they're all trying to decrease their headcount, and this is a way to have it self-select out. So you're starting to see companies as a way, instead of just announcing these massive layoffs, that they're going to do these different return-to-office mandates to weed it out. And what that's going to do is put more demand again back in the city. I was speaking to brokers in South Florida, and that market is soft because the reality is anyone that was going to move to Florida has already done it. Or anyone, even the
coming
rental
back.
market,
Or
they said
coming
it was
back.
soft because they bought it. And I got a perfect house, again, to welcome them back to just like home. I have to pull it back full circle.
You can have Miami and New York.
Exactly. But I really think the Northeast, which was overlooked, New York in particular, during the COVID boom, is due for its rebound now. We're seeing the largest annual price appreciation, again, not in the city, but the Northeast in general as a corridor, and the city is due for it. If you look back, we haven't had any appreciation in the last 8.5 years. From basically 2016 to now, the market's been flat. Yes, it's been up and down 5-10 points in that, but it's been flat. Name me one other meaningful market in the country that has had no appreciation in 8.5 years.
People are selling $500 restaurant reservations. It's coming.
It is a bargain in New York right now.
$500 restaurant reservation. All right, listen. So the rental market, is it going to crash when things start coming back again, or is it going to just level off? And what does leveling off really mean?
I think that's a hard question to answer. I think it just depends on demand and the interest rates. If the interest rates
Back
come
to
down
work,
to a
back
lower,
to office work, in a lot of the bigger companies means maybe more rentals than sales or both. I don't know.
there are also some people. I just did a $55,000 a month rental. He will not buy in New York. He does not want to have a footprint in New York.
There's always that, right?
You have that, but then on the other case, someone spending that would rather buy something and not have it the length of their lease.
absolutely.
When you rent something, it's only as long as a lease term.
It depends on their commitment to their work. If they have family here, it's all about level of commitment to New York.
There's always, there's always sort of a number where you look at it and you're like, oh my God, that rental price does not make sense if I can get a mortgage for X amount and I can purchase that home, because that will win over, I think, the rental market any day of the
The
week.
down payment.
I completely agree, and I think that the sale market is going to boom come at the start of the year. Maybe you're right in December. I can see it happening. Go ahead.
There's such a mismatch, though, between where the bulk of the demand is, whether it's on the sale or rent, and where the supply is, and where the new inventory, right? There's so little new construction happening right now in the city, and it's going to take time for that to restart. And what is being built is geared towards the top 10% of the market, not the bulk. So again, you maintain this mismatch where you're going to have a lot more of the mass market being interested in purchasing now because, again, they're more sensitive to the rates or their jobs are requiring them to be here. And that inventory is just not being built or coming on in any sort of large way. So I see it all still getting firmed up and prices going up. The luxury market is going to continue doing what it does, and any softening from an interest rate perspective will only help give more creative financing opportunities for the wealthy to not tap their cash reserves. So all in all, I don't see how this is going to create anything other than more volume from a transaction perspective, which naturally will lead to firming negotiation, which is the precursor to actually rising prices, because any seller is going to become a buyer generally as they look to upsize or downsize their trade, and you're going to have people jump back into the purchase market.
Everybody's moving to Gowanus. There's 8,000 units coming on the market in the next 12 months.
Waterfront.
Yeah, waterfront.
Water is always a big draw. All right. Great conversation. We're going to come back with my thoughts for the week right after these messages. Don't go anywhere. Okay, my closing thoughts for this week. Tuesday, September 11, 2001, was a bright, beautiful morning in the Northeast, especially here in New York City. I distinctly remember thinking exactly that as I exited the subway at the World Trade Center, believe it or not, for a quick walk to my office on Exchange Place, only a couple of blocks away in downtown New York City. This was well before the first hijacked aircraft left Boston and flew into Tower 1. I know I was thinking about what a gorgeous day it was. Temperatures were in the 60s. Nothing but puff clouds, and you all know I love puff clouds. It was one of those rare days after a very hot summer that I had just spent in East Hampton, New York. That morning, my heart was still in East Hampton, but also happy to be back in my town after many weeks of vacation. 23 years after its destruction in the September 11th attacks, the Freedom Tower now stands, leaving the building burial site untouched, where nearly 3,000 people were killed in the attacks on that day. I remember so many friends and clients who worked on the 96th and 97th floors of Tower 1, and all of them perished in that tragedy. I can never forget their names, their faces, their personalities, and so many fun times I spent with many of them selling them technology through the years. They all worked in IT for Marsh & McLennan Insurance, and all of them are gone. I pray that other New Yorkers and Americans everywhere never have to experience what I did so many years ago. Sorry. It has been a lifetime of painful memories and struggles to be there on that day for myself and for many others. I pray for all who died or who have been handicapped or diagnosed with cancer through these years. I applaud all the first responders and everyone involved in trying to keep us safe that day. So many people have had mental health issues because of these events, and as I always look for ways to give back, these are the times that I feel so compelled to share my time, my history, and my story for the betterment of our society. I will never forget. We shall never forget. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok at Vince Rocco, or maybe my website, thinkvince.com. And Einstein once said, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who owns it understands it. He who doesn't pays it. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network to all of you all around the world, Thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I am truly grateful, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.